Good morning, everybody. I'd like to first thank you all for spending some of your summer vacation, learning some more about your retirement benefits with the Mass Teachers Retirement System. My name is Scott Cawley. I'm the director of our Contact Center Services group here at the Teachers Retirement System. And joining me in today's presentation is going to be Christopher DeLisi. He's the assistant director here in our Contact Center Services division. First, just for some general housekeeping issues, we are going to focus today on Tier 1 benefits. And if you do have your MTRS benefits booklet, or if you did open that up, that link that we had sent when you registered for the program, this goes right along all of the slides that we have in our presentation or here in this booklet, and there is a ton of additional useful information in the margin notes next to those slides. So this really is the most comprehensive guide we have to your MTRS benefits. It's a great resource, so you may find that you will refer to this booklet from time to time now that you do have access to it. It is available on the website as well. Today with our program, we're going to give you a quick introduction to the Mass Teachers Retirement System, share with you what we do and the resources that are available to our members. We'll go through your membership and speak about your annuity savings account. Just to get that out of the way pretty quickly here, your annuity savings account is not a separate annuity. You know, a lot of people hear that word annuity when they're referring to a 403B or an IRA of some sort. This here, your annuity savings account, is the amount of money that you've contributed to the teacher's retirement system over your career. We track that money that you send into us or that comes in from your school districts, and that is the money that's invested by the Commonwealth, by the pension fund, to make sure that we can pay you a lifetime retirement benefit. We're going to focus today on your benefits, and we are going to focus today on Tier 1 benefits, as I mentioned. We'll talk about the differences between Tier 1 and Tier 2, but today's focus is going to be for people that are going to be retiring, within the next 2-3 years, hopefully, and focusing on those Tier 1 benefits. The benefit calculations part of our program is always helpful. That's really what helps me to see how the calculations are done. We'll cover the 3 options for everybody, A, B, and C, go through the retirement formula and explain how we do calculate somebody's benefit with some sample calculations. And then at the end of the program, we'll go through some additional information, things that you need to consider before you do retire, how your retiree health insurance works once you do retire from our system, and how your Mass Teachers Retirement System may impact your ability to collect your full Social Security benefits. As I mentioned, we do now have 2 tiers of benefits. What we refer to as Pension Reform 3 created a new benefit structure for members of the Teachers Retirement System that started contributing to our system on or after April 2nd of 2012. We do refer to any of those members that started on or after April 2nd of 2012 as Tier 2 members. And there is a difference between the benefits available to Tier 1 members and Tier 2 members. For anybody who is in Tier 2, anybody who started paying into a mass contributory retirement system on or after April 2nd of 2012, you do have to be at least 60 years old in order to retire with 10 or more years of service. They have changed the age factors for members of who started on or after April 2nd of 2012 who are in Tier 2, so they've reduced the age factors. And anybody who is in Tier 2 does have a 5-year salary average period instead of a 3-year salary average period. Now, in our booklet, we do have some additional information about Tier 2 membership, so it is still a useful resource. On page 25, we do have a side-by-side comparison of Tier 1 and Tier 2. We do have a Retirement Plus percentage chart for Tier 2 members on page 27, and we do have on page 28 some additional information about the age factors for people. So there is some additional information in there, but as I said, today we are going to focus on Tier 1 benefits and Tier 1 calculations. The teacher's retirement system is formed under Mass General Laws Chapter 32. So that means there's a whole chapter of the Mass General Laws that kind of governs what we do and how we implement the law. So, you know, when we're looking at somebody's retirement calculation and determining what types of salary they can use for their salary average, we have to go to Chapter 32 and make sure that that is usable. Chapter 32 establishes for us what types of service are purchasable. So, you know, we always have to make sure that we are implementing the law. We operate as a defined benefit plan. So you've heard of 401ks and 403bs. We are what's known as a 401a defined benefit plan. So if you do have a financial planner that you're working with, they will ask what type of a plan this is, and that's where you have that information. We're a 401a defined benefit plan. That means that your benefits are based upon your age, your service, and your salary. So when somebody comes time to retire from our system, we assign an age factor to their age. We multiply that age factor by their full years and full months of service, and that tells us a percentage that they would receive of their salary average. And for Tier 1 members, your salary average is your highest 3 consecutive years of salary. It's not your highest 3 salaries. Please keep in mind it's your highest 3 consecutive years of salary. Best thing I can say about our benefits is that they are guaranteed for life. Not too many things are guaranteed these days. When you do retire from our system, you know that you're going to be receiving a lifetime benefit. Your benefits are always going to be at least the amount that you did retire at. They will increase with cost of living adjustments as long as they are approved by the legislature, but your benefits will never go down. So that's a great thing. We are governed by a 7-member unpaid board, and we do have 2 offices. We're all here working out of our main office in Charlestown, and we do have a small office in Springfield, and there's about 90 staff members between our 2 offices. The Mass Teachers Retirement System is now the largest of all of the public contributory retirement systems in Massachusetts. Anybody who's eligible to pay into the Mass Teachers Retirement System, it is mandatory that they contribute to the system. And as I mentioned, of the 104 public retirement systems, we are now the largest. We have just over 95,000 active teachers contributing to our system, about almost 30,000, 28,905 inactive members. Those are people that have money on account with our system but are not currently working and contributing to our system. And we have 70,415 retirees and survivors, people that are receiving a monetary benefit from our system. And that retiree population is the number that's growing the fastest for us. So in all, we have almost 200,000 people that are either getting a benefit from our system or do have money on account with us. When somebody joins the teacher's retirement system, when you're in a position that is eligible to start paying into our system, what first happens is we establish your MTRS annuity savings account. As I mentioned, that's your account with the teacher's retirement system where all of your retirement contributions come in. In that account, if you purchase service throughout your career, and we'll talk about those service purchase opportunities today, any money that you pay for a service purchase comes into us and goes right into your annuity savings account, and interest that accrues on your account does go into your annuity savings account. So we track that over time, and we do have an accounting of what you each have individually in your MTRS annuity savings account. Throughout your career, we maintain that account. We do send yearly statements with those account balances, process your service purchases if you do have any, and keep you informed of any retirement issues through seminars, broadcast emails, and those types of things. If you do leave active service prior to retirement, so if somebody does want to stop teaching and they are not going to be retiring from our system, you would be eligible to take a refund of your money from our system. So refunds have to be done all in full, so you can't take a partial refund of your account. And if somebody does take a refund of their money from our system, you are refunding all of your money and your rights within the retirement system at the time that you do that. And we'll talk some more about refund scenarios in a little bit. If somebody does pass away with money on account, we do process benefits to their survivors or to their estate. And during retirement, We are the ones that are paying you your monthly retirement allowance and would pay any benefits to survivors, depending on what option you may have selected when you retired from our system. Our website, mass.gov/MTRS, is one of our greatest resources. On our website, that's where you'll go to download any forms that you would need to use. So all of the service purchase forms, all of the retirement application, the refund application, beneficiary designation forms, all of those are available right on our website. And you do not need to sign into an account to access them. Right on our main publicly facing website, you'll see a link for forms. And in that forms section, you'll see forms for active or retired members of our system. We have a benefit estimator available on our website as well. Again, on the publicly facing website, you can access a benefit estimator where you plug into it how many years of service you believe you'll have at the time that you retire, full years and full months, what your salary average would be, how old you would be, and then you can also give it some beneficiary information for how old the beneficiary would be, and it will do some estimates for you. So it's a really useful tool, especially if you're trying to plan, on when you might retire. What happens if I purchase a year of service? What happens if I retire in 2 years and I'm 2 years older with 2 more years of service? So you can play with that in a lot of different ways. It's always where we put all information first. So if there's any pending legislation, anything that may impact your benefits, we always put that information up on our website first. So it's a great resource, great place to keep checking throughout the school year. And we do recommend that you join our email list. It's a great way for us to get in touch with people, makes it easy. And as long as we have that email address on file, we'll make sure that we do send you those broadcast emails when we do need to notify our membership of anything. So I know that was some quick information, but some good, information to set the table here. Let me see if there's any questions here that would make sense for us to take. Yeah, sure.
Oh, hi, Scott. We have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is, are administrators who work 220 plus days years of service factored differently than an educator who retires working 180-ish days?
Great question. And it's a common question that we do receive. So when we get questions about people's work years, oftentimes administrators refer to themselves as having a 12-month work year. Teachers, we commonly, speak about them having a 10-month work year. What it comes down to is that you need to fulfill your contractual obligation in order to receive a full year of service. So if a teacher is typically contracted to work 183 to 185 days or so, they need to work all 183 or 185 days of their contract in order to get credit for a full year. Once they have fulfilled their contractual obligation and worked all the required work days in that year, they would receive a full year of service. The same exact thought process is used when we talk about administrators. Administrators, may have anywhere from 195 to 260 days in their work year, and they would need to work all of their required work days in order to get credit for a full year. So commonly I'll get the question, since I'm an administrator and I work 12 months, do I get a year and 2 months for my school year? And unfortunately, the most credit anybody can receive by law in 1 year is a year of service. So if a teacher is contracted to work 10 months, they fulfill their contractual obligation and they work all 10 months, they get credit for a full year. Same premise when we're talking about an administrator. If they have 220 days in their contract year, they have to work 220 days in order to get credit for a full year of service. You have another question?
We have one more question in the chat. Salary basis is the highest 3 years. If you retire mid-year, do they look back at just the last 3 full years, or do they prorate the latest partial year?
It's another great question about your salary average calculation. So when we calculate somebody's retirement benefit, we are able to use your highest 3 consecutive years of salary or your last 3 years of employment, whichever is greater. Usually they're one and the same. So if somebody works, let's just keep it simple, up to the end of November of a school year. So they have September, October, and November of this coming school year, let's say, and they want to retire on November 30th. Presuming there's a raise in this year's contract, that's going to be their highest rate of pay, most likely. So they would get the benefit of using those 3 months of salary at their highest rate. and then we count backwards until we have 3 full years of salary for them. So we'd use 0.3 of this coming school year, all of this last school year, all of the year prior to that, and 7 months of the 4th year back to get the best possible 3-year salary average for them using their highest rate of pay in their last months of service. So that's how we do it. We need to make sure that we're using 3 full years of salary. So we would use the partial year of this school year that's coming up, all of this past year, all of the year prior, and again, 7 months of the year before that to get the best possible salary average. Have anything else?
Sure, we got one more in the chat. If a teacher leaves service before reaching retirement age, but has enough years of service to retire, do they have to take a refund, or can they let the money sit and wait until they are old enough to retire?
Great question. Great question. These have been 3 really good questions, really applicable questions for a large number of people. So if somebody does leave service, they have 10 or more years, so they're vested. And that's really the main point here. Somebody would have to have at least 10 or more years of service to be vested in our system. Once somebody has 10 or more years of service, they can leave their money on account and wait until they are old enough to retire or older to effectuate their benefit. So if somebody's 45 years old, they have 10 years of service in our system, and they stop teaching, they can leave their money on account, wait until they are, if they're a tier 1 member, at least 55 years old to effectuate their benefit and retire at that time. Or if somebody's in tier 1, your age factor technically increases all the way until you're age 65. So you could leave your money on account, not do anything, and wait until you reached the age that you wanted to retire at, all the way up to age 65, to start collecting your retirement benefit. Now, it would not help anybody to get a higher benefit by waiting past age 65. Age 65 is the highest age factor we use in anybody's calculation. It's 0.025. If somebody were 66 or 67 when they retired from our system, we would still use that age factor for age 65, 0.025 in their calculation. That's the maximum age factor that we can use. So it wouldn't help anybody to receive a higher benefit by waiting past age 65. But you can absolutely leave your money on account as long as you're vested. You have more than 10 or more years of service. Leave that money on account and wait until a later date to start collecting your benefit. You would want to investigate with your school district as to whether or not they would still offer you retiree health insurance if you did stop working and wait to retire later down the road. I would say typically they would not offer you the retiree health insurance if you put off your retirement from our system for a number of years, but health insurance does come to you from the local level. You would have to check with your insurance coordinator with your district. All right, let's keep on going with the presentation here. So I've mentioned that you make contributions to the retirement system, and that comes right out of your pay from your school district. Your payroll officer makes sure that they're taking the correct rate and sends that in to us, and we maintain that in your annuity savings account. This slide here talks about the different contribution rates that we have seen throughout history. So prior to January 1st of 1975, people paid into this system at a 5% rate. 5% of their salary came into the retirement system as their mandatory contribution. You'll see that between 175 and 12/31/78, it became a 7% contribution rate. And then for these next 3 lines, we have this 7+2, 8+2, and 9+2, these different +2 contribution eras. So if anybody started between 179 and 1283, they paid into our system 7% on everything they earned and an additional 2% on anything they earned over $30,000. And that was the required contribution. They would pay 7% on everything and only 2% additional on the amount they earned over the $30,000. And you'll see between 184 and 630.96, that became 8+2. They paid 8% on everything they earned, 2% on anything over $30,000. Between 796 and 601, it was the 9+2. So they paid 9% on everything they earned, 2% more on anything over $30,000. And then with Retirement Plus, the contribution rate became a flat 11%. So anybody who started teaching after July 1st of 2001 was mandatorily enrolled at that 11% contribution rate. And anybody that was a member of the system prior to 2001 who wanted to be in that Retirement Plus program, they elected to have their contribution rate go up from whatever their previous rate was up to a flat 11%. Now, because that contribution rate from 796 to 630.01 was 9 plus 2, and we all know that 9 plus 2 equals 11, that has caused some confusion over the years. Some people, if they see they're paying 9% and then it says plus 2, or sometimes on pay stubs it'll say retirement plus, meaning there's a plus 2%. Some people have thought that if it says 9 plus 2 that they are in that Retirement Plus program. But that's not the case. If somebody is in that Retirement Plus program, they are paying a flat 11% on their total eligible earnings to the teacher's retirement system. And then anybody who's in Tier 2, anybody who started after April 2nd of 2012, they are also mandatorily enrolled at that 11% rate. Anybody who's in Tier 2 is paying 11% of their eligible earnings to the teacher's retirement system. But if somebody is in Tier 2, once they have worked for 30 years of service, their contribution rate would go down to 8% at that point. So from the 30th year onward, they would have an 8% contribution rate. The reason why there's a finger with a string on it on the slide is just so that you take a look at your next pay stub, little reminder there. Take a look at your next check. Make sure that you do understand the rate that you're paying. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to your payroll department, speak to them about it. And if they have any questions about your contribution rate, they can reach out here to the teacher's retirement system for help. Now, if you know what rate you should be paying, depending on when you started paying into the teacher's retirement system, this slide here talks about the types of salary that you should be making retirement contributions on. So it also has on the slide on the right-hand side the amounts that would be excluded. Those are the amounts that the types of salary that you should not be making any retirement contributions on. So if somebody's close to retiring, maybe another way of looking at this slide would be everything on the left would be included in your salary average calculation, and everything on the right would not be usable towards your salary average calculation. Since it's not usable towards your salary average, they should not be withholding any retirement contributions on those types of salary. They will never help you to receive a higher retirement benefit, so they should not be withholding any contributions on those. But let's go through them here. Your annual base pay is always pensionable. So if you're a teacher covered by a collective bargaining agreement, usually there's a few pages towards the end of the contract that have the salary schedule. It shows that if you're a teacher with 30 years of service, and your master's, you get paid $85,000, whatever it is. That's your salary per the collective bargaining agreement, your base pay. Your base pay is always pensionable. If somebody's an administrator and they have an individual contract, that individual contract sets forth what your base pay is. Base pay, always pensionable. Regular longevity is pensionable. It has to be written into the contract. Usually the longevity clause is right there in the CBA. It says once a teacher has worked here for 10 or more years, they receive $1,000 additional. Maybe after 10 years, you get $1,000. After 15 years, it's $1,500. And after 20 years, it's $2,000, whatever it might be. Okay, those payments are regular and recurring. They are set forth as a set dollar amount in the contract. That's what we mean by regular longevity. Athletic coaching is always pensionable, mainly because it's written right into Chapter 32 of the Mass General Laws. It says that anything paid for the instruction of athletics will be considered pensionable earnings. So athletic coaching is one of the few types of additional earnings that can be paid by the day, the hour, the minute. Because it's related to instruction of athletics, it is considered pensionable earnings. Usually in the contract, there's a few pages that list all of the stipended positions, and there's usually a page dedicated to all the different coaching salaries. But what we want to see is that stipend that you're receiving is listed in the contract. It has the duty that you are supposed to be working, so the duty and the dollar amount set forth, so that we know that that is covered by the contract, and it's telling us the set dollar amount that you're supposed to receive for rendering that additional service. So typically those pages will list the salaries for coaching. Basketball coach gets $3,000, football coach gets $3,500, whatever it might be. There's usually a few other pages that list the other stipended positions. Mentor, $1,000. Yearbook advisor, $1,200. We want to know that we have the duty and the dollar amount listed to help make sure that that is considered pensionable earnings. And that's where we're covering the annual payments for additional services pursuant to your collective bargaining agreement. Now, things that we know would always be excluded would be any amount paid due to your employer's knowledge of retirement. Those are looked at as retirement incentives. So it says in your contract that if you notify the district a year ahead of time that you're going to retire from the district, that they will give you a $5,000 payment for notification early. That's fine to get that payment, but that's between you and the school district. It would not be considered pensionable. They should not withhold any retirement contributions on that stipend, on that payment, because it would not be usable towards your salary average for retirement purposes. Sick leave buyback programs, if they pay you for unused sick time, not considered pensionable. Again, fine to have that payment, fine to receive it, but it's between you and the employer, has nothing to do with retirement. Sometimes administrators have in their contracts that they get paid for unused vacation time at the end of their career. Again, not pensionable earnings. Hourly payments are typically out. So if you are paid hourly for something, some tutoring after school, some curriculum work, something like that they're paying you an hourly payment for, would not be usable. There are two types of hourly payments that are considered pensionable earnings. One of those would be athletic coaching. So if they do pay you hourly for coaching, that would be considered pensionable, again, because it's written into Chapter 32 of the Mass General Laws. And then another hourly payment that is considered pensionable would be covering school lunch duty or breakfast duty. And that's due to a court case where it is said that, if you are in the lunchroom or space where the kids are eating their breakfast or lunch, covering that, monitoring that breakfast or lunch period, if you're paid hourly for that work, that is considered pensionable earnings. A temporary salary augmentation is a long way of saying a one-time payment. If it's you're paid one time and one time only, it does not become part of your base pay from that point forward. That's temporary, and that would not be considered pensionable. And then annuities and fringe benefits were phased out with some early parts of pension reform. Nobody can receive any payments as annuities where that's considered pensionable earnings with us. Fringe benefits, travel allowances that people might receive, anything like that, not considered pensionable earnings. Do you have any questions at this point on salary, maybe?
We do have a number of questions in the chat. First one is, if I took 1/2 of a year unpaid for maternity leave, how does that impact my years of service?
Okay, so if somebody took a half a year as a maternity leave, how does that impact their years of service? When somebody's placed on an authorized leave of absence, we are able to give them 1 month of service for being placed on that leave. And they don't have to pay for that month. They don't have to contribute for that month. The law allows us to give somebody up to 1 month of service for being placed on an authorized leave. So if somebody went out on a leave at the end of November 30th, and they're on a leave, through the end of the school year, let's say, we would be able to give them 1 additional month of service. So technically they'd get credit for 4 months of that school year. And then if they're unpaid for the rest of that year, they would not be receiving any additional service credit. So if somebody's placed on an authorized leave, they get 1 additional month of service for us for being on that leave, as long as that leave is at least 1 month or greater. If somebody's out for 2 weeks, we can fill in that 2-week gap for them so they don't lose any service. But if that leave is more than 1 month, most credit we can give them for the leave is 1 month of service. And at that point, they would start to be losing service after that leave period.
I'm looking at my estimated creditable service summary. It doesn't list any years before July 2010. It says not available. Why?
Okay, great question. We do have, I believe it's on that page where you're looking at that information, an explanation that any service prior to 2010, there is no service credit going to show for you. So any of the service prior to 2010 is not what we consider validated service. And the reason for that is that we went to a new computer system in about 2012. And when we converted to the new computer system, we were able to get all of the day forward data into the system from about May of 2010 forward. So any service prior to 2010 is considered by our system unvalidated. We do need to go through your whole file, look at everything by hand, go through that to calculate how much service somebody might have prior to 2010. So that's why you would not see any service prior to 2010.
We got one more. What about a teacher who changes roles to become an administrator before the end of the full teacher year? Should they get credit for a full teacher year?
Great question. So if somebody switches from being a teacher covered under a 10-month contract to being a administrator who's working under a, what we term a 12-month contract, there might be some lost service there. Because if somebody's working a 10-month contract and they immediately just switch over to a 12-month contract, you may not be fulfilling all of that contractual obligation for those the 12-month service. So there's a little bit of a we'd really need to look at the year, look at what portion of the year you worked under each to make that determination. But I will share with you that there is a possibility that you would not receive a full year of service credit if you did switch from teacher to administrator right in the middle of a school year. We do see it sometimes where people, stop teaching at the end of a school year. If that next year they're going to be an administrator, maybe they do take a month off in the summer and then start that administrator year, let's say in August. If that administrator year was supposed to start as of July 1st, because the administrator contract goes July 1st to June 30th, if they didn't, they only worked the 11 months of the 12-month contract, in that case, they're not going to receive that full year of service. All right. Let's keep on going with this presentation. Now, if we're talking about, as I mentioned, your annuity savings account, we're going to be talking here in this next section, as this slide's setting up this next section. We'll talk about if you leave service before retiring and how taking a refund of your money from our system works. We'll talk about the types of retirement benefits available to our members. Regular retirement, retiring from our system. We refer to that as somebody superannuating. You're retiring at the end of your career, so that's a superannuation retirement. There are disability benefits available to our members, both ordinary disability benefits and accidental disability benefits, and termination retirement benefits are available to Tier 1 members. There are in-service death benefits, so we do want to make sure that people understand what benefits may be available to your family members should you pass away as an active member, and we'll go through how that works with everybody. So if somebody stops teaching and they resign voluntarily, somebody has less than 10 years of service, they are eligible to receive a refund of their money from our system, and the interest is calculated at the rate of 3% of your accumulated total deductions, and that's compounded annually. So you do receive interest on that refund. In order to take a refund, you have to be separated from your position. So once you've stopped working, you're no longer eligible to make contributions to our system. At that point, you would be eligible to take a refund of your money from our system. As I said, once you take a refund of your money from our system, you're refunding all of your money and all of your rights within the retirement system. So if you do come back into teaching later on, a couple years later, you will be entering the retirement system under whatever the prevailing rules and regulations are at that time. So if the contribution rate changes from 11%, let's just say something crazy, to 15% during that time period when you were gone, and the new members are paying that 15% contribution rate, you would have to pay that new contribution rate. You would not be grandfathered in under those old rules because you did take a refund of your money. So it is something to consider if you're thinking about coming back into teaching in Massachusetts. It might be better to leave your money on account rather than take that refund at that time until you're sure you know what you're going to be doing. If somebody does have 10 or more years of service in our system, technically they're vested, as we talked about earlier. So it is looked at differently if somebody takes a refund after they're vested in the system. So if somebody has 10 or more years of creditable service, they receive the interest just at a regular rate. They don't receive that 3% on their accumulated total deductions that's compounded annually. So the interest factor is a little lower on that refund if somebody has 10 or more years of service. If somebody is involuntarily terminated, means if somebody is fired for cause, you can receive interest at the regular rate as well. And in all cases, once you have stopped working and left your money on account, if you take a refund later down the road, you only receive the interest that accrued on your money for 2 years after inactivity. So if you stop teaching, leave your money on account for 5 years, and then after that 5th year, you decide you're going to take a refund of your money, you would only receive the interest that had accrued on that for 2 years after you went inactive. You'd basically be foregoing 3 years of interest. The good thing about that is that the interest rate is very low right now. The interest rate in our system is about 0.1% that your money earns each year. Again, because this is not an investment-based system, it's a pension. So the interest rules are a little different in terms of how that's calculated and how that works in terms of how your money accrues interest from the pension fund. As I mentioned, if you take a refund from our system, you do have to consider that. That's why we have on the refund application some information about what it means when you take a refund. If you do come back into service after taking that refund, you will come in under whatever those new prevailing rules are. So if somebody was a Tier 1 member and they took a refund of our system, you come back into teaching in Massachusetts, you would come in as a Tier 2 member. So you'd fall under the Tier 2 age factors. You would have a 5-year salary average instead of a 3-year salary average, and would have an impact on the benefits you'd be eligible for from our system. So definitely something to think about before you do take a refund of the money from our system. To talk about retirement now, kind of changing gears into the retirement section of things. To be eligible to retire under Tier 1, you can be any age with at least 20 or more years of service. So you can make yourself eligible at 20 years of service, even if you're younger than 55, or be 55 years old or older with a minimum of 10 years of service. So if somebody is 45 years old, they have 20 years of service, yes, they'd be eligible to retire from our system. The age factor used in their calculation would only be the age factor for 45s, would be pretty low, but they would be eligible to retire and collect that lifetime retirement benefit. The other way to make yourself eligible, be vested in the system, is to be 55 or older with a minimum of 10 years of service. If somebody's in that Retirement Plus program, so anybody who started after July 1st of 2001, or anybody who elected into that Retirement Plus program, the Retirement Plus program is an enhancement on your benefit. The enhancement works for somebody once they have at least 30 years of service, and 20 of those 30 years have to be what we call membership service. And membership service is service where you are making direct contributions to the Mass Teachers Retirement System. So as long as you have at least 20 years of direct membership service where you're making contributions directly to the Mass Teachers Retirement System, the other 10 or more years of service to get you up to 30 years or above 30 years can come to you from any combination of purchases, transfers in from local retirement systems, whatever that might be. But you have to make sure you meet those two thresholds, at least 20 years of membership service paid directly into the teacher's retirement system, and at least 30 or more years of service overall for that enhancement to kick in for you. The enhancement under Retirement Plus works in such a way where once you have 30 years of service, you receive an additional 12% added onto whatever your benefit would be without that enhancement. So at 30 years of service, you receive an additional 12%. And it increases 2% more with each full year of service you have beyond 30. So at 30 years of service, you receive an additional 12%. Once somebody had 31 years of service, they'd receive an additional 14% added on. Once somebody had 32 years of service, they'd receive 16%, 33, 18, 34, 20. So once somebody reaches those 30 years, and they're in that Retirement Plus program, your benefits start to really accelerate quickly at that point. You're getting a higher percentage based on just working an additional year. You're getting the use of a usage of a higher age factor on each birthday. And with that Retirement Plus 2% being added in for each full year, you'll start to see your benefits increase pretty quickly at that point. Well, there's a couple types of disability benefits, as I mentioned. This slide covers both of them. An ordinary disability retirement benefit might be available to somebody if they had a pre-existing condition, something that's preventing them from being able to continue working. You have a back problem, you can no longer be up in front of a class, working in front of the class each day, every day, and it's preventing you from being able to complete your job and do your job. You may qualify for an ordinary disability benefit. To apply for an ordinary disability benefit, you have to have at least 10 years of service. So you have to have a minimum of at least 10 or more years of service. And the formula for the disability benefit works in such a way where if you're not a military veteran, your age factor would be bumped up to the age factor for 55. And that's the only enhancement there under an ordinary disability benefit. So if somebody had 10 or more years of service, they were younger than age 55, the ordinary disability formula gets them up to that age factor for 55 so that they could at least use that higher age factor in their calculation and get a better benefit than what it would be. Technically, it would really make them eligible to retire. It brings them up to the age of retirement. Age 55 is thought of as the age of retirement a lot when we're looking at Chapter 32. So the non-veteran formula gets you up to that age factor for 55, and we multiply that age factor for 55 by whatever full years and full months of service you have. If somebody is a military veteran, they would be eligible for 50% of their last annual salary, plus there's an annuity portion. So for a military veteran, formula is a little better, helps them to get up to that 50% figure, 50% of the last annual salary. Under an accidental disability benefit, there's no service or age requirement, so somebody could work just for 1 year as a member of our system, and an accidental disability benefit's only available to somebody if they are injured or hurt on the job while completing their job duties. So there's no service or age requirement. The disability had to have been sustained while they were working and performing their job duties. And the formula for a disability, accidental disability benefit comes out to 72% of your last annual salary. So somebody would be eligible to receive 72% of their last annual salary, plus there's an additional annuity portion added onto that as well. I'd say typically it keeps it under 75%, depending on how many years of service, how much money's in their annuity savings account, might be somewhere between that 72 and 75% of their last annual salary. Termination retirement benefits are available to Tier 1 members. The termination formula was removed from Tier 2 benefits. To qualify for a termination retirement benefit, you have to have at least 20 or more years of service, and the termination must be completely involuntary. And termination formula is usually used if somebody's position is eliminated due to no fault of their own. If somebody is a vocational teacher, they're the HVAC instructor, and the school district does away with the HVAC program, they may qualify for a termination formula at that point. Again, it has to be completely involuntary. Some examples here for reduction in force, failure of reappointment, cannot be due to any moral turpitude. So if somebody is fired for cause for something that they did, something criminal, obviously, they would not qualify for a termination formula. And under the termination retirement calculation, the benefit formula is 1/3 of your 3-year salary average. So we still do look at your 3 highest consecutive years of salary. You'd be eligible for 1/3 of that, plus an annuity portion is added onto that as well. It usually works out to maybe a little less than 45% of somebody's salary average. So it definitely helps somebody to get a better benefit if they are younger than 55. If somebody is older than 55 years old, we would really need to look at the calculation and see if the termination formula would be better for them, or if the regular retirement benefit would be a better calculation. And we will do that. We'll look at both to see which calculation helps the person more. If somebody's in that Retirement Plus program and they've reached 30 years of service, most likely the Retirement Plus benefit would be a better benefit for them than the termination formula if that were the case. But we will look at that. We can help people with those calculations. Do you have any questions at this section?
We do have one question that's been published. Can you please clarify what you said earlier for me? If I retire from a Massachusetts school at age of 61, but do not take my MTRS pension until age 67, I will receive the age 67 retirement percentage, correct?
So if the question is coming from a tier 2 member, then yes, the age factor would continue to go up to age 67, and they would be able to use the age 67 age factor in their calculation. If somebody is a tier 1 member, the age factor caps out at 65. 0.025 is the maximum age factor for a tier 1 member. So if they were waiting to retire until age 67 and they were a tier 1 member, the maximum age factor we could use would be the age factor for 65. Great. Let's keep on going. Now, to talk about creditable service, we had a question earlier talking about somebody's 10-month service and 12-month service. As I said before, we really look at it as you fulfilling your contractual obligation. So if somebody has a 10-month contract, you need to work all of your required work days in that 10-month contract to get a full year of service. If somebody has an administrator's contract, they need to work all of the required work days in their contract year to get credit for a full year. Leaves of absence, as I mentioned earlier, because of the question, if somebody's out on a unpaid authorized leave of absence, because it is an authorized leave through the school district, we can give you up to 1 month of service credit for being placed on an authorized leave, and we will do that as long as we have that documentation. Mrs. Smith is on an authorized leave of absence for the 2021-2022 school year. We'd make sure we gave them 1 month of service for that. If somebody's on a paid leave of absence, they should be making their retirement contributions while you're out on that paid leave. As long as they make those retirement contributions while you're on that paid leave, there'd be no missing service. We'd receive all of those contributions. So that really would not impact somebody's service credit. Full years and full months of service are always used in somebody's retirement calculation. So there's a lot of misconceptions out there. A lot of, kind of people think that you only get credit for full years of service. You get credit for full years and full months of service at the time of retirement. So if somebody has 30 years and 5 months, we're going to take 30.5 and multiply that by your age factor to figure out what percentage you're eligible to receive of your salary average. So it's very important to get those leaves of absence documented. Every month helps. Every month helps to get you a better benefit from our system. So, just want people to understand that, know that it is important to get credit for authorized leaves of absence, and you do get credit really for every day that you work in a school year. We take the total number of days that you worked and were paid for and divide that by the total number of days in the contract year to figure out how much service credit to give somebody for a partial year. Now, regular service, when we're talking about part-time membership service in our system, in order to be a contributing member of the teacher's retirement system, you have to be working at least 50% or greater under contract in a position that requires you to be certified by the state's Department of Ed, and you have to hold that certification. So if somebody was working part-time and contributing to our system, this slide here covers how we calculate that part-time service credit for them. And there are some time periods where if somebody was working part-time and paying into our system part-time, where we would give them full-time equivalency for those part-time years. It can get a little tricky, but we'll go through it here on this slide, and I hope that this helps to keep it straight for everybody. So if somebody was working 50% or greater and contributing to the retirement system, so you had to be a member of the system making contributions to the teacher's retirement system, on or before 11/9/90, they would receive full-time service credit. So if somebody worked 50% for the 89-90 school year, They paid into our system. We would give them credit for a full year of service for that 89-90 school year. Now, if somebody was working part-time between 11/9/90 and 7/9/2010, if they never changed their status, they always worked part-time from 11/9/90 all the way through 7/9/10, as long as there was never a status change to full-time, that person would be eligible to receive full-time service credit for all of those years because they never had a status change. They never changed their percentage above part-time. If somebody was working part-time, let's say 50% up to 1995, and then in 1995, they went full-time at that point, we would be able to give them full-time equivalency up to November 9th of 1990, and then everything from November 10th of 1990 through 1995 would be prorated. They would only receive the 50% credit or 60% credit, whatever percentage they were actually working. And then from 95 forward, where they went full-time, obviously, they're going to get the full-time service credit for that. So that really what that hinges on is whether or not there was a status change from part-time to full-time between those dates of 11/9/90 and 7/9/2010. And then due to a regulation change, anybody who has been working part-time from July 9th of 2010 forward, so really that 10-11 school year forward, we are prorating all service credit. So if somebody is working part-time after July 9th of 2010, no matter what, they're going to be receiving that part-time service credit. We do have additional information about part-time service, how it's calculated, and some information about salary average calculations when somebody's working part-time leading up to retiring on page 34 towards the end of the booklet. It's a really useful page, very helpful, especially if somebody's working part-time leading up to retiring from the system. I've mentioned a couple times that there are service purchase opportunities for people, members of our system. So these purchases at the top, where it says billed at actuarial interest rate, are all billed at a rate of 7%, compounded annually. So we figure out what you would have really what you would have made in contributions to the teacher's retirement system if you had been a member of our system at the time that you were rendering the service that you're trying to purchase. And then it's calculated it with an interest rate of 7% for each year from when you actually rendered the service until today to figure out the total cost of that purchase. A refund buyback is if you ever took a refund from the Mass Teachers Retirement System, or if you took a refund from one of the other publicly controlled contributory retirement systems in Massachusetts, you would be eligible to purchase that service back. We call that a refund buyback. You're purchasing back the amount of money that you refunded and the service associated with that money. If you took the refund from the Mass Teachers Retirement System, we know how much money you refunded. We have those figures. So those are pretty simple. And we do have a service purchase application on the website for a refund buyback. Whether you took the refund from our system or from one of the other contributory retirement systems in Massachusetts, you'd need to fill out that form. And there is a corresponding service purchase application for all of these different types of service on our forms section of our website. Mass, state, or municipal employment is where somebody was working and getting paid with public funds from a city, town, or the state of Massachusetts directly. So if you were ever working as a lifeguard at a town pool during the summer while you were in high school or college, you were, working in some capacity for the Department of Public Works, whatever it might be with your city or town, worked in the Parks and Rec department, whatever it might be, you would be eligible to purchase that service with our system. We would need you to get that documented, how much you worked, how much you earned, and then we can do those calculations to figure out how much money you would have to pay into the teacher's retirement system to get credit for that amount of service. Mass substitute or temporary teaching, one of the common ones that we see if you were ever a substitute teacher or working less than 50%, somebody's working 40% for a full year, you're not eligible to make contributions to the Mass Teachers Retirement System. But once you become a member of our system, you would be eligible to buy that service with us. you are eligible to do that. The mass substitute temporary part-time teaching and tutoring and paraprofessional service purchase form is what you would use. It's really our all-purpose form for work that somebody did in a public school system in Massachusetts. You would have the payroll department of that school system document your work for you and then send that in to us so that we can figure out how much service you're eligible to purchase and how much you would have to pay into the system to get credit for that service. Out-of-state public school teaching is purchasable, provided that you are not eligible for a retirement benefit from that other state based on those years of service. On that out-of-state public school teaching service purchase application, there are 3 parts. Part 1 is filled out by you. Part 2 is filled out by the public school system in that other state where you were working, documenting your work history there, how long you worked, the percentage of full-time you worked, and your salary in that district for the years you're trying to purchase. And then part 3 of that out-of-state service purchase application goes to the retirement system in that other state so that they can document whether or not you have money on account with that system, how their system works, and so that we have that information to make the determination. If 73, we don't see too many of these anymore, mainly because of the date range on that. What we're talking about there is, parochial school service, service where somebody's working in a privately funded school, getting paid by a private school. The only service that's purchasable there is if the service was rendered prior to 1973, because in 1973, a federal law went into effect that said that you had to have the ability to pay into some type of a retirement plan from 73 forward. So the service prior to 73 may be purchasable under this section of the law. Your Social Security eligibility can impact your ability to purchase that type of service. If you did pay into Social Security while you were working at that school and you are eligible for a Social Security benefit due in part to your work at that school, we would not be able to allow you to purchase that service with us. But as I said, we don't see too many of those these days, being mainly because of the date range on that. Department of Defense overseas dependent school teaching is the only type of service that somebody can purchase from another country, and that service had to have been rendered at a Department of Defense school, and that school had to have been in another country. We do need the DoD documentation on that service. The ones at the bottom of this section are currently billed at the buyback interest rate, so currently be compounded at a rate of 3.5% annually. Military service, people are eligible to purchase up to 4 years of their military service. You have to meet the Massachusetts definition of a military veteran. That is on the service purchase application. So if somebody's interested in purchasing that military service, seeing if they would be eligible, definitely download that military application, take a look at that. And it does lay out for you the criteria you'd have to meet to be eligible to purchase that with our system. The non-public school teaching service in a mass publicly funded school. We need to know that all of the students that you were teaching at that school were at least partially funded by the Commonwealth of Mass. So usually those schools are schools that are serving possibly a special needs population. It's usually a situation where a school district in Massachusetts cannot provide the educational needs to that student, so they have to pay to send that student to a school that can satisfy the IEP or needs of that student. And if that's the situation and you were working at one of those schools and all of the students you were teaching were from sending school districts in Massachusetts, you may be eligible to purchase that service. We would need to know if you paid into a retirement plan while you were there, if you have any retirement benefits from that system. Those things can impact your ability to purchase that time. Vocational work experience is purchasable with our system. You're eligible to purchase up to 3 years of your trade experience that you needed to have to receive your vocational certificate in that trade. So you're eligible, as I said, to purchase up to 3 years of that trade service. And Peace Corps service is also a 3-year purchase where somebody would be eligible to purchase up to 3 years of their Peace Corps service. The reason there's a finger with a string on it on this slide is just, to remind you, think back, go through your records. If you were ever working in high school, college, prior to becoming a teacher in Massachusetts. If you did have any of these types of service, think about that. Look at the service purchase applications for these different types of service. Most of the service purchase applications have an eligibility quiz on the first page, where it'll ask you some questions to help you make the determination as to whether or not you may be eligible to purchase the service. So it might be helpful for you to just go through that, read through those questions, and help yourself make that determination as to whether or not you want to apply to purchase that service with our system. I mentioned the different service purchase applications. You would need to send that service purchase application to the payroll department of wherever it was that you were working. They would document your service and your salaries in that position and go through all of that, documenting it for you. They should then send that back to you so that you can go over it, make sure that they documented all of the service that you wanted them to, make sure that the salaries match up with what you remembered earning. Just really go through it, make sure that that information is correct before you do send it in to us. They are supposed to send that form back to you so you can look at it, make a copy for your records, and then send it into the retirement system. The cost of these purchases is typically based upon what you would have earned if you had been a contributing member of our system at the time that you rendered that service. So if you were rendering that service during, I'd say, prior to 96, you'd have been 8% member of our system. We would figure out what 8% of the total earnings that you had in that position were, calculate what you would have made in retirement contributions to our system based on what you actually earned, and then add interest onto it from the dates you actually rendered the service all the way until today. So that's where things can start to get more expensive. If we're compounding 20, 30 years of interest on something at 7%, that's where things start to add up and where this service can get expensive in some cases. Special formulas do exist for certain types of the purchases, like the vocational purchase and the military purchase. Those are based upon your first year's salary when you started contributing to either the teacher's retirement system or any public contributory retirement system in Massachusetts. For the vocational purchase, it's your first year's salary when you started paying into the Mass Teachers Retirement System. Or if you took a refund of your money and came back later when you most recently established yourself as a member, we would have to use that most recently established salary for that calculation. And the military purchase is based upon your salary when you first started paying into any Mass public retirement system, whether it's our system or some other contributory retirement system in Massachusetts. If you are eligible to purchase service, we will do the calculations for you and send you an invoice telling you how much service you're eligible to purchase and how much that service would cost you to get credit for it. When we send you that invoice, to make payment, you can either pay with a personal check, you can do a pre-tax rollover of funds from an eligible plan, so you can roll money over from a 403B or an IRA that you may have to help pay for that service purchase. It's a good way of doing it so that you don't have to dip into your savings. You can use that pre-tax money from a 403B, an IRA of some sort. And the good thing about doing that is it comes in from them pre-tax. It's not taxed at all. One of the only ways people can access money in one of your pre-tax savings plans without having any tax penalty is if you're purchasing service with a defined benefit plan, which is what we are. That became available back in 2003 as part of the Economic Growth and Tax Reconciliation Acts of 2003. So that has not always been the case, but from 2003 forward, we have been able to allow people to use pre-tax money to pay for service purchases, which has definitely helped out a lot of our members. Again, you don't pay any taxes on that payment to us. So it's a nice way of using that pre-tax money. We also do offer a 5-year installment plan. When we send you your invoice, you would need to make one payment up front, and then you would receive a bill each year for the next 4 years on that installment plan. You do have to keep in mind on the 5-year installment plan, there is additional interest that you're paying each of those next 4 years, but it's the only way that we have where people can pay into our system over time for a service purchase. So if you don't have all of that money up front, you can get on that installment plan, make one purchase, one payment right away, and then have those next 4 payments come out over the next 4 years. If you wish to pay that money off early, you could just contact our system and ask for a buyout cost to pay for that remaining balance on that purchase, cutting off any more further years of interest by doing that. The main deal on service purchases is that you have to pay for all of that service before your date of retirement. So in order for us to use all of that service in your calculation, you have to pay for that all prior to your date of retirement that you're using. In order to purchase service, you have to be an active contributing member at the time that you make application. Okay, so on most of the purchases, you are only eligible to purchase the service if you applied to purchase the service while you were still actively employed and eligible to make contributions to the Mass Teachers Retirement System. There's an exception on that with Peace Corps service purchases and refund buybacks. If somebody took a refund of their money years back, they've come back into teaching in Massachusetts, and they want to purchase that refund back if they've gone inactive. As long as that service does not make them eligible to retire, we would allow them to purchase that refund buyback and add that to their service credit. All service purchases, as I said, have to be paid for in full prior to your date of retirement, and late payments on purchases can postpone your date of retirement. And we've seen that in some cases if somebody's trying to do a service purchase in that last year of work leading up to them retiring, and they're trying to do a rollover of money from their pre-tax savings institution. If they drag their feet and they don't send that payment to us by June 30th, in order for you to use all of that service credit, we would have to push your date of retirement beyond June 30th to whatever day we actually get payment for that purchase. Now, we don't want that to happen. So if somebody is trying to do a service purchase with a rollover, trying to make payment, to get something in to use towards the retirement benefit, you need to make sure that you stay on top of it, that when that financial institution is sending us those funds, or just make sure that you yourself are sending that check into us in advance of the date of retirement you're using. And at this point in the program, I am going to turn the service, rather the retirement calculation part of the program over to Chris DeLisi. I'm going to bring him in right now so that he can finish out the program with you. Thank you so much for coming with us. And before we do that, yeah, of course I can. Before we do that, I'll take a couple questions before we bring Chris in. But once I finish these questions, I'll bring him over. And I just want to take the time right now to say thank you all very much for coming, attending the program, and I hope that you do get some helpful information from this.
Thank you, Scott. Couple of questions in the chat. Are years working as a teaching assistant factored into the pension?
So are years working as a teaching assistant factored into your pension? The quick answer on that would be yes. I would say in most cases, if you're working as a teacher's assistant in Massachusetts, you're going to be able to use that service in some way, shape, or form towards your benefits with us. If you paid into the local retirement system while you were working as a teaching assistant, you would need to see if that local retirement system transferred that money over to us. So that's something where you don't have to make a purchase. You wouldn't have to pay any additional money to get credit for that service. Once you become eligible to be a member of this retirement system, if you told us about that teaching assistant time you had with that other retirement system, by law, we have to request a transfer of your money. So we request from that other retirement system for them to transfer your money and your service to the Mass Teachers Retirement System. And once they transfer that money to us, they tell us how much service credit we can give you for that transfer, and you own that time. You start building on that time in our system. So that's a really nice way of doing it. If they can transfer that money right in, you don't have to pay any additional money out of pocket for that. If you took a refund of that money from that other retirement system, you would need to let us know that so that we can ask that other retirement system for a refund breakdown, where they tell us how much money you refunded from that system and how much service to associate with that refund. And then we would calculate how much you would have to pay into our system to get credit for that service. But yes, you should be able to get credit for that work done as a teaching assistant, teacher's aide, paraprofessional. As long as that was in Massachusetts, you absolutely would be able to get credit for that in our system.
Great, got a couple more. If I started teaching in 2004, Was I automatically enrolled in Retirement Plus? And if I retire after 25 years instead of 30, does that mean there is no benefit from Retirement Plus?
Got it. So if somebody started contributing to our system in 2004, they were never a member anywhere else. This is the first mass public retirement system that they are a member of. They are mandatorily enrolled in the Retirement Plus program because Retirement Plus started in 2001. Anybody who started after July 1st of 2001 is mandatorily enrolled at that 11% rate. And if they don't make it to 30 years of service, we retire them under the regular retirement formula. And there is no refund of any additional contributions. There's no enhancement in that benefit. Because 11% became the contribution rate as of July 1st of 2001, that is the benefit structure. You would have had to have paid in at that 11% for each year. If you don't reach the 30 years, you're not eligible for any of the enhancement. So your benefit would be calculated at 25 years, whatever age factor you are at that time, and that would be the whole calculation.
Great. Just one more. Just to clarify, my creditable service estimate says participating in the box labeled your Retirement Plus status. Does participating mean yes, I am contributing the 11% and not 9 plus 2?
If your service estimate does say participating under Retirement Plus, that means that you are in the Retirement Plus program and you are contributing at a flat 11% to the system. So participating means you are in Retirement Plus. Good. All right. Again, thank you everybody for your time today. Appreciate you taking some time off out of your vacation to be with us. And I'm going to bring Chris in to help with the rest of the program. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for being with us today. Excited to bring you through the rest of the presentation. We'll be starting with the option selections, going over the benefit calculations for Retirement Plus and a regular superannuation benefit. And at the end, we're going to get into more retiree issues. Information that you need to know a year before retirement all the way through your retirement and when you become a benefit recipient from the MTRS. I just want to say, again, thank you for joining us today, and it's a pleasure to go through the rest of this presentation for you. What we have on the screen are the three benefit options when you make a decision on the retirement application. A point of clarity, when you're an active or inactive member, again, you left service but left funds on account, you never took a refund, you have an inactive beneficiary. When it comes time to retire and fill out our retirement application, you'll choose one of the three options you're seeing on your screen right now, A, B, or C. The A, B, or C option will drive whether or not in retirement you're leaving a survivor benefit to a relative or named individual on the form. So an inactive beneficiary, if you don't have one or you don't know who it is, you could sign into your member self-service account to view your beneficiary information or navigate to our website. In the form section of our website, you can download a new inactive beneficiary form, send it in, has to be sent through original mail, and your newest form will be your inactive beneficiary. So that would be if you passed away prior to your date of retirement. What we're talking about with the three benefit options is what happens when you retire and after your date of retirement. On the retirement application, you can choose A. A is the max allowance. I just want to clarify, 80% is not the maximum allowance for everyone, right? Not everyone's going to reach the max allowance of 80%. A max allowance could be for you if you have 15 years of service as a tier 1 member or 10 years of service, sorry, as a tier 1 member at age 55, 15% of your 3-year average. So your max allowance is based on how many years of service you have, how old you are when you retire, and what your salary average will be. So the max allowance will be received under option A. Most of our members do choose option A, about 60% on any given year. We run stats each year. And if you download the program guide from the homepage of our website, you'll see what the last class of retirees chose. But option A is the most popular option because you may not have a benefit of max 80%. You may want to leave a survivor benefit through alternative means like life insurance. So if you choose A, it is your max allowance, but if you were to pass in retirement, there's no survivor benefit. So the benefit stops. You, unfortunately, in this morbid situation, retire, get your max allowance, a year later pass away, the benefits would stop from the Commonwealth. So option A is your max allowance with no survivor benefits. Your spouse on the application does need to just sign off and be made aware of your option selection. So that way, if you choose A, they know if you were to pass in that unfortunate circumstance in that tough time, that there is no benefit from the retirement system. So the retirement application does have a place for your spouse, if you are married, to sign the application. And just be made aware. They don't get to choose your option, but they are made aware of your options so they can plan moving forward after your death. Option B is probably the toughest to explain. It's our least popular option, but it's tied to your annuity savings account when you're an active member. Once you retire, it becomes an annuity reserve fund. So it gets moved over to the retiree side and the balance on our retiree account. Just to explain, there may not be a benefit to a survivor under option B. And what you're doing is you're leaving a benefit that would be a lump sum, a one-time lump sum payment of your balance, if any, remaining in the account. As the member, you would receive approximately 1 to 3% less than option A. So we're always calculating option A first, and then there's a reduction from option A for choosing B or C. It's not a great reduction under option B. It's approximately 1 to 3% less than option A. It's a range because, generally speaking, the older you are at the time of retirement, the higher age you have, age factor you have, and the more money you have in your account, generally speaking, the reduction could move closer to 3%. So it's generally between 1 and 3% reduction from A. So not a huge hit, and that remains for the rest of your life. So you choose option B, you're going to get the option B benefit for the rest of your life. They're all guaranteed lifetime benefits. You'll be stuck with the 1 to 3% reduction for the rest of your life, even if there's not a balance left to a survivor. So how the payout to the survivor works is, at the time of your retirement, we move your retirement annuity savings account or annuity account to a retiree account. Each pension check you receive from the system, about 20% is being pulled from that annuity account. So slowly over time, your annuity account as a retiree is being depleted. So in about 9 to 11 years after your date of retirement, there's nothing left in that account and the state's paying your benefit. So if you were to pass away close to your date of retirement, the lump sum payout to a retiree, or to your survivor, sorry, would be higher than if you passed away further away from your date of retirement. After 9 to 11 years, there's no payout to a survivor, but you're still stuck with the 1 to 3% reduction. Think of it as a way to safeguard your annuity account. You're worried about choosing A. You're worried that you might pass in 1 to 2 years from your date of retirement. In that case, what would happen is, in 1 to 2 years from your date of retirement, at least there'd be some lump sum payment due to a survivor. Under option B, there's no restrictions on who you can name as your beneficiary. It could be a friend, neighbor, you can name multiple individuals, which is tough under option C because you can only name one individual under option C. So if you have multiple children, under option C, you'll see you can only name one child. So it's a tough decision. So B, you can name multiple individuals, don't have to be closely related to you. However, just remember, you're stuck with a 1 to 3% reduction from option A for the rest of your life. And after 9 to 11 years from your date of retirement, there may not be a benefit left to a survivor. Moving on to option C, which is really truly a member survivor benefit, a lifetime benefit for a survivor or family member. It has to be someone that's closely related to you. You can only name 5 individuals under option C. It can be a parent, child, sibling, spouse, or former spouse who is not remarried. Again, a parent, child, sibling, spouse, or former spouse who is not remarried. Only one of those 5 individuals. And how the reduction works for C is it's someone that's closely related to you. And it's based on their age. So if you choose somebody that's younger, like a child that's maybe in their 20s or 30s, the reduction might be higher than what you're seeing on the slide. Might be higher than the 11%. If you're choosing a parent, someone older than you, it might be lower than the 9%. But generally speaking, if you choose someone that's close in age, you will be reduced under option C 9 to 11%. So that's a generality, but it depends on who you name. If you name someone close in age, you'll fall between the 9 to 11% figure. If you are curious, if you name your spouse what your option C offset would be, our online benefit estimator is a great tool. You can type in your closest birthday and your beneficiary's closest birthday to figure out your option C offset. It's a little different than option A. Under option A, we choose, when we calculate your benefits, and we'll go over the next few slides, how we calculate benefits, we take your actual age. For option C, we're going to take the beneficiary's closer age and your closer age as of the date of retirement, and we have charts that will figure out what your offset should be. Our online estimator on our external website will provide you with your specific offset for naming an individual that's closely related to you. So you're taking about 9 to 11% less home than option A, but it's still a lifetime benefit. And you do have the power of giving a lifetime benefit possibly to one named survivor. And it is for the rest of their life. So if you were to pass in retirement, your survivor would receive, your named beneficiary would receive 2/3 of what you were receiving under option C. So to recap, at the end of the day, if you were to name beneficiary under option C, you would receive 9 to 11% depending on their age. And then if you were to pass, your survivor would receive 2/3 of what you were receiving under option C for the rest of their life. There is a pop-up provision, a safeguard built in. If you choose option C, you cannot name another beneficiary after your date of retirement. We've had members that have named their spouse as the option C beneficiary and in retirement got divorced. You cannot change that option C selection. So you're locked into that beneficiary for the rest of your life because the calculation is based on your named option C survivor. So in that case, what would happen is if your beneficiary predeceases you, you would at the least pop up to the option A max allowance. You can't name another option C beneficiary. Under option B, you can change your beneficiary anytime in retirement. And C, you're locked in because we calculated your benefits at the time of retirement based on your closer age and your beneficiary's closest age. I hope these three options help you decide when it gets closer to retirement. If you are close to retirement, on the retirement application, the page where you select your option, there is another brief description of these options. And we do have videos online very similar to the presentation that you're sitting through if you want to rewatch the video as well and go through the options to better understand that. All right, now we're getting into the kind of nuts and bolts of the presentation. This is one of my least favorite parts because I'm just basically reading off the slides here, the factors that you're going to see. But this is the retirement formula. You have an age factor based on your age. And again, these calculations are all geared towards tier 1 members. It doesn't mean we don't have tier 2 resources. On our website, we have a tier 2 estimator that's available right on the homepage of our website. Go to our homepage and go to I want to and estimate my retirement benefits, and you get to choose between a tier 1 and tier 2 estimator. Just for the sake of time, we're focusing mostly on tier 1 members because that's the majority of the members retiring from our system today. The calculation here does not change though. What changes is the age factors used in the calculation, whether it's a 3 or 5 year salary average, but this is the formula for all members. We take an age factor associated with your age, multiply it by your credible service. And one question that I constantly get from members is, what do you use for credible service? Is it full years? If I work a few months into a school year, will that increase my benefit? It will. We use full years and full months of credible service. So at the time of retirement, we use full years and full months. So just know every full month that you work will be factored into your credible service. And then what that gives us is a base percentage of your salary. An age factor times your credible service gives us a base percentage. If you're in retirement plus, we add on that additional retirement plus percentage that Scott explained earlier. And we'll get into some examples here, one a regular superannuation and one a retirement plus calculation. And that will equal your total percentage of your salary average if you're in retirement plus, again, the max percentage being 80%. You might hear a lot of teachers say, I want to go out the day I reach my max 80%. We multiply that percentage by your 3-year salary average, your highest 3 consecutive years, or your last 3, whichever is higher. And again, if it's tier 2, it'd be a 5-year salary average. And that is your option A annual benefit. So again, we're always calculating your option A annual benefit. If you are a veteran, if you have 20 years of service in the MTRS and you're a veteran, you would get $15 per year in credible service, max up to $300 additional annually on your benefit. And both examples that we have here are just throwing in the veterans benefit to better understand it, but that would be your total option A annual allowance. We have Mary Educator, who is retiring this past June, and we have some examples here. Her retirement plus status is non-participating. She's a non-participant, and the age factor at 59 for tier 1 is 0.019. It's really simple for tier 1 members to explain the age factors. A little more difficult for tier 2. For tier 2 members, the age factors change if you get to 30 years of service, and they go out 4 decimals in some places. I'll explain it for tier 1 for all our tier 1 members. Age factor at 59 is 0.019. It maxes out at 65 and goes up 0.001 every year you get older. So 60 would be 0.02, 61 would be 0.021, 62 0.022. So you see here the age factor for 59 is 0.019. She has a nice mix of credible service here coming out to an even 35.0 years. In this case, it is coming out to full years. She has a mix of regular service with Pittsfield, out-of-state service with Kentucky, and purchased some other buybacks, substitute and other Mass time, Parks and Recs Department in Mass, substitute service in Springfield to come out to 35.0 years. And you can see the salary average is pretty easy to calculate there. These are all contractual years. We don't use calendar years when we calculate salary averages. We use your contract year. So if you work on a fiscal year basis, you're a superintendent, we would use, or assistant super, or you work as a director, we would use July to June, your contract. If you're a 10-month employee, we'd use your collective bargaining agreement. So the school year. If you're in an 11-month position in between, we would use that as well. You know, you might start in August, come in before school, and that would be your contract year. But we use your contractual year. So you see here, she earned 73,000, 75, 77 in her last 3 years. And that brings us to a nice even salary average of 75,000, and she is a veteran. So what we're simply going to do is take our formula and plug Mary Educator's figures into the formula. So 0.019 times 35.0 comes out to 0.665 converted to a decimal is 66.5%. She's not in retirement plus, so her max allowance, option A, would be 66.5% of the $75,000 salary average. We take 0.665 or 66.5% multiplied by 75,000, and the option A annual benefit that Mary Educator would be eligible for, gross benefit, $9,875. We'll talk about some deductions that may come out in retirement. So her gross allowance here under option A is $49,875. She is a veteran. We can add on the additional $300 to come to $50,175 a year. Monthly is $4,181 a month. Now, if we were in an audience, I would ask for your question and say, why are we breaking this down monthly? We're breaking it down monthly because there's a big pay cycle change in retirement. You're going to be paid at the end of the month on the last business day of the month. So you get 12 payments throughout the year, and it's broken down monthly. So Mary Educator's gross monthly benefit on the last business day of the month would be $4,181 a month. That's an example for regular superannuation retirement. Our next example is going to be an example of a retirement plus calculation. We have Tom Teacher coming up here, which will show us here, I believe, or option B. Sorry, we'll go into the option B allowance first. The option B allowance for Mary Educator, before we get into the retirement plus example, is about 1 to 3% less. And Mary Educator's example here, based on what she had in her annuity account and how old she was when she retired, we're coming out to $468 a year, which is really close to the 1% figure. But again, it could be a little higher depending on your situation when you retire and how much you have in your account. So $468 a year less. To safeguard what's in the annuity account, just to recap under option B, if you live 9 to 11 years into your date of retirement, after that point, you still receive the option B allowance you're seeing on the slide, the reduced amount from A, but there's no benefit to a survivor. So at that point, there would be no survivor benefit, but you're always going to receive your option B allowance for the rest of your life. Option C is calculated based on the members and beneficiaries' closer age to their date of retirement. Again, when we calculate option A, we use your actual age and the age factor based on the age that you're retiring. When we figure out the option C offset, we have these actuarial tables that govern all retirement systems. So these count for city and local retirement systems as well. And we look at your closer age. So if you're retiring in June, your birthday is in September, you're closer to your next birthday. So if you're retiring in June and you use 59 in your option A calculation, but your birthday is in September or October, you're closer to that next birthday. So you can see here, Mary Educator's closer birthday age 60. When we did our option A calculation, we used the age factor for 59. So the member's closer age in this example is 60. The beneficiary's closer age is 59. In this example, we match up on our chart, we match up the age for the beneficiary, closer age for the member, and we come out to 90.99% of option A. So to figure out the offset, it's 9.01% reduction for Mary Educator to name someone's, as a beneficiary whose closer age is 59, with her closer age being 60. That will change depending on your closer age and your beneficiary's closer age under option C. But in the example we're giving here, it's 90.99% of A or 9.01% reduction. So now we're just going to simply show you how the option C offset works. Pretty basic math here, but for the eye, it's very pleasing here because we know the offset's 9.01%, or she's going to receive 90.99% of option A. So we take the option A annual allowance, $49,875 a year, and we multiply it by that option C factor. That comes out to $45,381. So the 9.01% reduction brings her benefit down a little over $4,000 to $45,381 a year. She is a veteran again, that remains constant in our examples. So it brings her benefit option C allowance to $45,681 a year. If she were to pass, the survivor would get 2/3 of what she is receiving. So the survivor in this case, if Mary were to pass in retirement after naming the option C beneficiary, the beneficiary would receive, or the survivor, $30,454 a year, $2,538 a month. So that's how the option C calculation will work. We are now moving on to Tom Teacher here. What you'll notice about Tom Teacher's figures is that he is participating in Retirement Plus. He's a little bit younger. He's 1 year younger than Mary Educator, and he has a little less service. He has 34.5 years. And I like that we're using 34.5 in this example because you can see that the 0.5 is full month's work. So we don't always use full years. So to explain, if you're a 12-month administrator and you're working 12 months, the 0.5 actually represents 6 months worked. So if you work July to June, if you work 6 months, July to December, you'll receive a half year credit. A little different for a 10-month educator. If you're a teacher that starts in September and you work September to January, that's 5 months. So if you're working September to December, that would actually be 0.4. So the 0.5 here for a teacher represents 5 months worked, for an administrator, 12 months, because it's a decimal. So 34.5 years. We're using full years and full months. Salary average and veteran status remain constant in both examples, $75,000 and a veteran. So let's plug Tom Teacher's figures into the option A slide. 0.018 as an age factor, multiplied by 34.5 years gives a base percentage of 62.1%. That is the base percentage if Tom Teacher was not in Retirement Plus. So there is a misconception out there that if you reach 30 years of service in Retirement Plus, you're automatically at your max 80%. That is not true. I can tell you that if you're 61 with 32 years of service, you're not going to be at your max 80%. You're going to have to use our estimator in some examples. Typically 63 years of age with 30 years will get you to your max percentage. But if you had 30 years of service, in Retirement Plus and you're 59, doesn't mean you're automatically at your max 80. So let's get back to Tom Teacher's example here. 0.018 times 34.5 brings us to that base percentage of 62.1%. Tom Teacher is in Retirement Plus. Scott earlier had mentioned that every full year past 30 years of service is an additional 2% on top of the Retirement Plus percentage. For reaching 30, you get 12%. Every additional year past 30 is an additional 2%. So in the example you're seeing, Tom Teacher has 34 full years of service. The 0.5 doesn't help in this example for the Retirement Plus percentage. So we add 12 up onto the percentage for reaching 30, and then 4 full years past 30 times 2% for each 2% for each additional year is 8% plus 12. In red, you'll see the 20% addition for Retirement Plus. So 62.1 plus 20 does equal our 82.1, but the max percentage is 80. So even if your calculation brings you past 80%, you are going to be capped at the 80% max allowance for all state employees receiving a benefit from the Commonwealth or local city or town. It's true for all retirement systems that govern police officers, firefighters. The max 80% is the max benefit. So in this case, we take 0.8 or 80% multiplied by the average of $75,000 will bring us to a nice even number of $60,000. So Tom's benefit annually with the Retirement Plus benefit will be $60,000. He is a veteran. We add on the $300 to bring us to $60,300 a year, $5,025 a month. Again, breaking it down monthly because you're paid, again, once a month on the last business day of the month as a retiree. And if you're interested about your figures, I recommend we have 2 different estimators. We have an estimator on our external website, just our regular website, mass.gov/MTRS. Click on I want to ... estimate my retirement benefits. We have a more detailed estimator in your member self-service account, and it's very helpful Because you can run an estimate for next year, and then it will try to project out the date you'll reach 80%. It'll tell you the month and year you reach 80%. It's on page 2 or 3 when you finalize the estimate in your member self-service account. So we have two different estimators. One's supposed to be a little more detailed, also a little more, I wouldn't say complicated, because I know you're all teachers and highly educated and can figure it out. But at the end of the day, the one online is a little more complicated than the one on our website, because the one on our website is you're plugging in all the figures and it's a form stack. The one on our website is going to give you the date you reach 80%. So I do recommend giving it a go. If you have questions, call our contact center or email us at our general email address, which we'll give you at the end of the presentation. So I do recommend checking out the resources we have online. We have a great communications department here that posts some awesome resources on our website. All right, so we're going to switch gears here to in-service death benefits. This is really, if we had a fourth option with the retirement system, it's not really an option, obviously, but it would be an option D retirement benefit. Option D retirement benefit is really an in-service death benefit, an active or inactive death benefit. Obviously a morbid situation to think about, but it's something that you really need to be concerned with as an active or inactive member, and information that you should know. Depending on if you have named a member survivor or lump sum beneficiary, I would say you should check if you have a beneficiary on file, if they're a lump sum or member survivor beneficiary, because the lump sum benefit, if you were to pass, is a distribution of your current annuity savings account to a survivor. Easier to explain. So if you pass away as an active or inactive member and you have a lump sum beneficiary, we're simply paying out that annuity account that you've built up through your career to a survivor if you've named a lump sum beneficiary. You'd see at the very bottom of the slide, it says keep your MTRS beneficiary designation current. When I was talking about the option selections again, if you don't know who your beneficiary is, we do have a member self-service account, or you can submit a new form from our external website under forms. Now, the member survivor benefit is calculated the same as option C. So very morbid to talk about, but if you're terminally ill and there's no immediate need for you to receive funds, you're terminally ill, you're going to pass, and you want to name, you're thinking about retiring and naming somebody as your option C beneficiary, I would just say call us, give us a call, get in touch with somebody here at the MTRS. If it's a terminal illness, it would mean more money for your survivor, a higher benefit calculation if you actually went on leave with your district or passed as an active member. It allows the retirement system to calculate your benefits similar to option C, but there's no 2/3 reductions for the survivor. So passing away as an active member does provide a higher benefit calculation to your survivor. So if you have a spouse that you're trying to leave a benefit to, that give us a call. We'll explain the situation. But a member's in-service death benefit as an active member is much higher than a calculation under option C if you were to retire. Now, if you're under 55 and you do pass away, we would increase the age factor to 55 in the calculation for the survivor. And we'd also do a calculation to increase the age factor for the beneficiary. So it's very similar to option C. That's how we would figure out the option C offset, but there's no 2/3 reduction. In addition, if you have children that are under 18 years of age, we pay $120 to the eldest child, and each additional child is $90 a month. So there's a benefit for your children, payable if they're under 18. If they are 22 and a full-time student, we go through a student verification process just to make sure they're enrolled as a full-time student, then they could receive that additional payment up till age 22. So there's an additional benefit for your children in that unfortunate circumstance if you were to pass as an active or inactive member. So keep your active beneficiary up to date. Just remember, when you do retire, your active inactive beneficiary ceases, and based on your option selection, that will drive your benefit to a survivor. All right, let's switch gears from this morbid topic to something a little more uplifting, retirement and receiving your retirement benefit from the MTRS. Let's take a look at some of the questions here. Do we have any questions in the chat?
We do.
Great.
First one is, do years in the Boston retirement system count if you are not in retirement plus?
Thank you. The question, they all could hear the question, Scott, sorry. Okay. So the way the Boston retirement system works is, we saw early in the program, they're one of the only systems that does not pay into the MTRS if you're a teacher in the city of Boston. So it really depends with Boston. If you're a public educator in Boston, you would have met the threshold for the MTRS. Those years are going to count like any other year in the MTRS when they transfer. So if you transfer service from Boston as an educator, certified and required to be, and you would have met the MTRS eligibility criteria, Those years come over to the MTRS, they count toward the retirement plus enhancement if you were participating in retirement plus. So they count just like a year in the MTRS. If you were in a support role with the city of Boston, say a para or an instructional aid, those services still come over, the years count, but they won't count toward the retirement plus enhancement. The 20 years of membership out of the 30 required to be participating in the MTRS or Boston as an educator. So that's the difference with Boston. If you're a teacher in Boston, years are going to come right over, count just like a year with the MTRS. But if you're a paraeducator or paraprofessional or instructional aid, teacher's assistant with Boston, still counts as a year, transfers right over as long as you didn't take a refund when you left Boston and it comes on over to the MTRS. As long as you didn't take a refund, those para years will count just like any other year of service, except they won't count towards retirement plus the 20 years of membership required for retirement plus.
Next question. If someone is out on an approved extended medical leave, but using their accrued sick time, so they are getting paid, what kind of leave of absence is that considered?
Thank you. So if you're using sick time from your district, it's a good question. It looks like a paid day to us. So that would be a leave of absence, but you're fully contributing. So we have leave of absence where you're fully contributing. We have leave of absences where you're partially contributing, and we have leave of absences where you're unpaid. So I'll clarify, if you're fully contributing and you're taking sick time, and this is sick time that you're taking for days you would have worked. So you're taking a sick day and you should be working, but you have sick time, you're eligible to use it, you're getting FMLA using sick time. As long as you use sick time and you're submitting contributions on those sick days, that will count toward credible service and regular compensation. If you're getting sick leave buyback at the end of your career, though, and it's a payout, again, that is not regular compensation, not usable in your salary average. I'm referring to sick days that are being taken for days you would have worked and before your date of retirement. Now, you could be partially contributing. So let's say you're out a whole year, but you have exactly a half year of sick time to use. You're out on leave. You want to stretch your pay over the year, and you're paid for half the year because you have half a year of sick time. But you want to take it over the whole year. In that case, you would get a half a year of credit because you're only being paid 50% of your total salary. So if you are taking your sick time and stretching it out and they're adjusting your pay and they prorate your paid days, that would be a partially paid leave and be partially credited. If you're unpaid, you would get up to 1 month of credit for any period that's unpaid, and you would stop accruing credit after 1 month. So you're out for 3 months, you get 1 month of credit if you're unpaid. But the fully contributing question is more kind of what you're asking, which is if you do take a sick day for a day that you should have worked, contributions will come right out. It'll look like a paid day to us. That'll be the regular credit. Thanks.
Okay, one more for now. Are adjunct teaching positions at a Massachusetts community college considered creditable service?
Great question. The adjunct teaching positions at a Mass community college are always interesting to explain. How it works is, as an adjunct professor, you may or may not be an employee of the Commonwealth. There's something specific in Mass general law that says if you're paid from an O3 subsidiary account, you may be ineligible to purchase the service. So we would ask you to apply for your adjunct faculty service. All the applications, the best bet is most likely to apply. Let us review it for eligibility. And if eligible, you'll receive an invoice with the cost and credit. Now, for adjunct teaching, you want to use the other Mass application. We have a section specifically geared toward higher education service in Massachusetts. It depends on that higher ed institution in Mass, that community college or your state university, what fund they paid you from. So if they paid you from what's called an O3 subsidiary account, Mass general law specifically says we can't invoice you for that service, and it's not public service. You're considered a contractor. So it's school by school, and it depends on the state university or community college. So I would apply using the other Mass application, and then we'll determine eligibility. You'll actually see that question right on part 2 for the payroll in that community college or state university to answer. Was this member paid from an O3 subsidiary account? That would drive your eligibility. So you'll know right when you get it back. So if you get it back from the higher ed institution, you'll know it'll be ineligible if they answered yes to that question. If they answered no, submit the application, and we'll take a look to make sure it's eligible. Maybe something else would make it ineligible. We always review them for eligibility. Hope that explains higher education, adjunct teaching. As a full-time professor, you would pay into the State Board of Retirement. If you don't know, higher education full-time employees pay into the State Board of Retirement even as professors. Adjunct teaching though, as long as it's not in a year, you're earning a full year of credit, I would apply, and we'll take a look at whether you were paid from that subsidiary account of the Commonwealth. The employer would have to answer that question. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. There are more questions, but let's get through the slides in the interest of time, and we'll circle back to the questions at the end.
Thank you, Scott. And if we don't get to your question today, we do have a general info email address at the end that we'll put up on the slide that you can help answer, kind of resend your question over email. We're doing our best to get to all the questions today, and thank you for participating in the program. And again, we'll do our best to get to all of them. So thank you. Health insurance is always an interesting topic for the MTRS because it's different than like SSA, but Social Security pays Social Security benefits, and if you have Medicare, they take it out of your Social Security check. It's all the federal government. It's a little different for the MTRS. The MTRS simply takes your premiums out of your paycheck, but the insurance is offered from your local city or town, your district that you're retired from. I know I saw one question today that was asking about charter schools. You may not be eligible for retiree insurance if you are retiring from a charter school. If you are retiring from a public school district, almost all public school employees will meet the thresholds to receive benefits from their district for health insurance. There may be some caveats to that. Say you don't have active insurance through your district because you get it through a spouse when you're active. You want to check in with your benefits coordinator in your town just to ensure that you are eligible for health insurance. There's no guarantee, but if you've been getting active insurance through your district for a period of time, you're going to be eligible for retiree insurance. If you're switching districts at the end of your career, you've only been with your district for 1 year at the end of your career, check with your payroll office, your benefits coordinator, to check on eligibility. So any questions about whether you're eligible, and I don't want to concern you because if you've been in your district for a period of time, 5 years, and been getting active insurance, you should get insurance. But if you've only been there, if only been in your district for 1 or 2 years, or you're working a charter, check with your school payroll office to see what the eligibility criteria are for retiree insurance. What you do need to understand is that your plan, your premiums, or your providers could change from your active, inactive plan. If you're active to your retiree plan. If you're inactive, you may not be eligible for insurance, meaning you stop teaching. So again, another question, if you're inactive, you want to ask your last district, would you be eligible to collect health insurance? You usually have to be active in getting insurance through the district. Even then, you might still be eligible if you're getting it through a spouse. So ask your benefits coordinator in your district if you are even eligible. But your plan, your premium, and your provider could change. Your copay or your percentage that you pay could go up, right? Because you're now under the retiree arm of the insurance in that city or town. Again, that city or town, if you work for a municipality, is going to cover police, fire, other public employees in your city or town. So they're governing all the public employees in that city, and that's where you're getting your insurance from. So if you're working for a public school district, your district's gonna be offering you insurance, but they're also gonna be covering insurance for the firefighters, the police officers in your town. So you might have to speak with somebody down at town or city hall to get more information. And sometimes the town treasurer is the benefits coordinator, not somebody in the school payroll department. So avoid any surprises. A year before your date of retirement, contact your insurance coordinator. What we're trying to do in this slide is give you the point of contact for your district. So if you're in the RMT, which is a Retired Municipal Teachers Program, and there's about 45 districts in the Commonwealth that are in the Retired Municipal Teachers Program. Again, you would have to go to the footnotes in our benefits guide, and you can download that from the homepage of our website, but we'll have a list in our benefits program. These are the slides, but we have additional information in the footnotes and on the margins of our presentation booklet. You'll see a list of all 45 districts. In this case, it's the only time you'd reach out directly to the Group Insurance Commission to receive information on what retiree insurance is going to be offered to you. So if you're in the RMT Retired Municipal Teachers Program, reach out directly to the GIC or Group Insurance Commission. It's possible that you have Group Insurance Commission insurance, but you're reaching out to your local coordinator. So you can see if you're not in the RMT, you want to reach out to the local insurance coordinator, and that includes districts that are in the GIC municipality program. So it's a little confusing, but you could have GIC insurance, but reach out to your insurance coordinator. Only the districts in the RMT would reach out directly to the Group Insurance Commission, which is a state-run agency. So if you're not in the RMT Retired Municipal Teachers Program, contact your local insurance coordinator. Someone in your city or town would know who that is, whether it's in town hall or in your school district. So reach out to your local insurance coordinator for questions about insurance if you're not in the RMT. If you qualify for Medicare, ask your school district if you have insurance that will supplement Medicare. So all public employees, despite the fact that you don't pay into Social Security, you may pay into Medicare. Anybody that switched plans, switched employment after April 1st, 1982, so you became a new employee after April 1st, 1982, which sure is most of our members attending today, or you switched employers after April 1st, 1982, you started paying that 1.45% Medicare tax out of your paycheck. If you see that 1.45% Medicare tax coming out of your paycheck, you have been paying it for 10 years or more, you qualify for Medicare. So at 65, you'll be pulled on to Medicare Part A, and that will be your primary insurance. You also want to sign up for Medicare Part B or C at that point in time. For Part B, if you don't sign up when you're first eligible, which is your 65th birthday, if you're still actively working past 65, then no, it's going to be 4 months before your date of retirement, but you always want to reach out to SSA before 65 to sign up for Medicare Part A. And then what will happen is if you don't sign up for Part B, it'll be exponentially more expensive moving forward if you want to sign up later in life. So you want to investigate your premiums that you would be paying for Part B when you're first eligible for Medicare. That is important because SSA wanted us to get the word out. We have it in this presentation because when you're first eligible for the regular Medicare, which is Part A, you want to investigate the other coverage, Part B. In addition, not to confuse matters, you want to go back to your school, because your school district may have a supplemental plan that would, fill in the gaps for your coverage, Medigap insurance. Medicare Part A may not cover all your expenses as a retiree. So you want to make sure that in addition to Part A, you want to look into Part B and supplemental plans through your district. So let's give you an example of somebody retires at age 62. They've had insurance through their district. They're eligible for retiree insurance. You receive insurance through your district, your regular plans that are offered to retirees. Once you turn 65, the game changes. You have to sign up for Medicare Part A and then reach back out to your town and reach out to the Social Security or Medicare office and then figure out if you want Part B and additional coverage. Your insurance changes at 65 if, again, you retired before 65. If you retire after 65, you want to sign up for Medicare months before, about 3 to 4 months before your date of retirement, and then also talk to your town about supplemental insurance. Some other things we have on this slide is ask about survivor health insurance. So if you want your spouse to continue on your plan, you're the breadwinner in the family, or you offer the insurance, if you were to pass away in retirement, what kind of survivor health benefits are allowed to existing family members? So if you provide the insurance for your family and in retirement, you're providing family coverage, if you were to pass away in retirement, see if your plans have any survivor health insurance. It might be a more expensive premium. Do they exist? What are the costs? Reach out to your benefits coordinator. And again, to circle back, we simply arrange to have the premiums withheld from your check and forward them to the town to prevent any lapses in insurance coverage and to make sure you're up to date with your payments. So we do that as a courtesy. We can take it out of your check. Working after retirement. I just want to start by explaining, if you go to the Working After Retirement page on our website, you might have already noticed that in calendar year 2022, and you're all active, so unless you already retired this past June, these earnings limits are waived until the end of calendar year 2022. Governor signed, I think it was an executive order specifically allowing retirees to return to work for calendar year 22. So currently these are lifted, but for most of you in the presentation, these will apply after you retire because you're not yet retired. So starting 1/1/23, these limits will be in effect. So basically, if you retire from the Mass Teachers Retirement System or any public pension plan in Mass, you're subject to working after retirement limits if you return to work in the Mass public sector. But if you're retiring from a Mass public pension system, there are no limits to go return to work in the following sectors. You can volunteer, of course, but there's no limits on working in the private sector. So you can collect your MTRS pension and then go work for the federal government or work in a private sector job or in another state, public and private. You could work in Massachusetts, retire from Massachusetts, go to New Hampshire, vest in their system and retire as a teacher from the state of Massachusetts or state of New Hampshire and keep your benefits separate. So just know that you have to keep the benefits separate. So no restrictions in the following sectors. However, If you're working after retirement in a public sector job and receiving a mass public pension, just know that if you're returning to the same employer and you're not age 62 years of age or older, or you're not at your max 80, then you have to wait 60 days, which works out nicely for teachers. If you stop working June 30th, you wait till the next school year. That's 60 days before you can return to work. It's only if you return to the same district. This is a federal requirement, so this always exists. You can't return to your same employer if you're under 62 or not retiring at your max benefit. You have to wait 60 days to return to the same employer. But again, if you're over age 62 or retiring at your max 80, you can return to your same employer in retirement the next day. What's more important here is, well, it's all important, but what's going to probably be something that you're going to have to worry about is the time or earnings restrictions. You can work, and both apply. It's not one or the other. So as a retiree receiving a mass public pension, you can work up to 1,200 calendar hours in a calendar year. Now, if you take 180 days, the state minimum required work year times 6 hours, it's 1,080 hours. You're going to be under the 1,200 hours if you're working in a school setting, even if you're full-time. So if you're retiring from the MTRS or any public pension plan and returning to work in a school system, the 1,200 hours won't be much of a concern unless you're working more than a full school year and have side jobs in the public sector. What you'll probably run into is your earnings. And the post-retirement earnings, if you're receiving a mass public pension, cannot exceed the difference between the salary being paid for the position from which you retired and the amount of your annual pension. After being retired for one full January and December, you can add $15,000 to that calculation. All right, thank you, and sorry for that interruption. We are going to finish the presentation here. Just had to jump onto a different computer. Sorry about that. So the next part about working after retirement is basically different rules regarding a critical shortage waiver. There are some situations where you can work without limitation if you retire from a mass public pension plan, but I want to be clear that the waiver has to be granted by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So the waiver process is not handled by the MTRS, but if you want to return to work and earn a full salary while collecting your full pension, just know that the school district would have to file for a waiver, not yourself. Say they can't find a qualified candidate, you can't find a physics teacher, and they need to hire back a retired physics teacher to work in that district. They can then go to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the school district, and then file for a waiver to hire that retiree back. If you retired under Retirement Plus to be eligible to work under that waiver, you must be retired for a full 2 years to be eligible. Again, the school district obtains the waiver. It's usually a 1-year waiver, maybe a 6-month waiver. It's not going to be a permanent waiver, but this would allow you again to work in a position where it's hard for the district to fill. The DESC, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, would have to approve the waiver, and that would allow you to work without limitation. All right, the next slide is taxation of your benefit. We talked earlier about what may come out of your paycheck, and there's really only a few deductions that will come out of your paycheck. One is health insurance if you have it through your district as a retiree. That would include any supplemental plans for Medicare, not Medicare itself. Medicare would have to be paid directly to the federal government, but a supplemental plan. Also, federal tax would be taken out. You're always going to be subject to federal tax. Uncle Sam will always be able to receive that federal, tax from your benefit. However, the good news is, and this is great, if you retire and live in Massachusetts, your retirement allowance is not subject to Massachusetts state income tax. If you do move to a different state in retirement, and I know some of our retirees are snowbirds, they use that term themselves, kind of go down to Florida or Arizona, what will happen is you may be taxed by that other state. Usually Florida, Arizona, Hawaii will not tax your mass state benefit. But I know around New England, Rhode Island, or Maine, if you move to those 2 states in retirement and that's your primary residence, you will be taxed by those other states. Your benefit will be taxed. Now, the tricky thing is we have no way to take state income tax out of your check. So if you move to a state that will tax your benefit, just know that you have to put that money aside when you file your taxes through that state. So just to recap, you're going to be subject to federal tax on the retirement application when you submit it. You will submit a W-4P form. You'll declare your tax withholdings just like when you started your job when you were active or inactive. If you live and reside in Mass, no state income tax. And then the health insurance or dental, vision, and life through your district will come out of your check. Now, as a retiree, by January 31st each year, we'll mail you a 1099-R. So we're your employer in retirement because we're making your payments. So it's a little bit different where you don't get a W-2 form, but you get a 1099-R form by January 31st each year, and it comes directly from the MTRS because we're paying you. Now, if you taught prior to January 1st, 1988, or you made a payment out of your checkbook, you would pay into your account, or there'd be money in your account that would be post-tax dollars or after-tax money. Now, that after-tax money will not be double taxed in retirement. It just takes a while to spend back to you. So if you ever made a purchase for a buyback out of your checkbook and it was after tax, we separated that as post-tax dollars. So what would happen is in retirement, you'll have a small tax break each month or each paycheck. And at the end of the year, that will be taken into account on your 1099-R. So we won't double tax you. The federal government has a rule called the simplified method or general rule, where we take your after-tax dollars, spread it out over a number of paychecks, and part of your benefit won't be taxable each paycheck. It'll be a small amount, and it'll take maybe 25 to 30 years to spend back to you, but there will be a small tax break each year, and you'll see that represented on your 1099-R, how much of your benefit would not be taxed. So that's what you're looking at for gross and net. So if you're talking to a teacher that reached their 80% maximum benefit, they may say, well, I'm not getting charged the 6.25% income tax. I'm not paying union dues, and I'm not paying retirement contributions to the MTRS, which might be 11%. So the take-home pay is much higher per your benefit as a retiree when you're actively working, you have more deductions coming out. So I hope this helps explain taxation of your benefit and what will happen in retirement. Probably been hanging on for the Social Security 2 double dipping laws. I have a smile on my face, but they apply to me as well. I understand that we may not consider these true double dipping laws because you're collecting or paying into Social Security on the windfall elimination provision on your own Social Security earnings. It's not truly double dipping. They're separate employment events. But back in 1982, the Social Security Act of 1982 did prevent states where you don't pay into Social Security from collecting a full Social Security benefit and a full Social Security benefit if you're receiving a pension from a non-covered state. So Massachusetts is one of about 14 states, don't know the exact figure, but approximately 14 states in the country where you pay into a public pension plan, but you're not eligible to pay into Social Security. There's two different offsets according to the Social Security Act. One is the windfall elimination provision. You probably heard of it as the WEP. The other is the spouse's employment earnings offset, which is the government pension offset, the GPO. The WEP is the collection of your own Social Security. The GPO is the collection of a spousal or widow's benefit. Let's start with the WEP. There's only two ways that you're exempt from the WEP or not going to be subject to an offset. You're exempt from the WEP if you are eligible to retire from the MTRS prior to 1/1/86. So think about that for a second. You needed to have 20 years of service to start teaching in 1966, or you were 55 years old with 10 years of service. No one can really beat this date anymore. It's becoming harder and harder, but you're exempt from the WEP in another way if you have what's called 30 years of substantial earnings. Again, this is helpful to have our downloaded benefit guide, because we have a page in our booklet that explains what a year of substantial earnings. I should start off by saying, too, that you qualify for Social Security benefits by paying in for 40 credits or quarters. So we may have some teachers out there that aren't eligible for collection of Social Security because they haven't met the minimum threshold to collect a retirement benefit from Social Security. So you have to have 40 credits, used to be quarters, from Social Security to qualify for a benefit through your own Social Security for paying in. However, if you have 30 years paying in and you've met the minimum threshold for what's called substantial earnings, and you have 30 or more years of substantial earnings, you're not going to be offset from Social Security. You can collect your full pension benefits and your full Social Security benefit. Your MTRS benefits, again, will never be offset. I just want to make that clear. You'll never be offset from collecting your full Social Security benefits, full MTRS benefits. It's your Social Security benefit that will be reduced. And with the windfall elimination provision, it's not an elimination of your benefit. You're always going to be eligible to collect some of your benefit. The max monthly offset's a little over $500 when you're collecting your own social. So if you have under 20 years of substantial earnings, but you don't have the 30 would mean you're not subject to the WEP. But if you have under 20 years of substantial earnings and qualify, you'll be subject to the max offset, which is about a little over $500 a month. Now, if you have 22, 23, 24, 25 years of substantial earnings, that's when the reduction's a little bit lower. So you have 25 years of substantial earnings, it may not be $500, it may be a $250 offset a month from SSA. So the calculation isn't as bad as you might think if you have more years paying into Social Security. You have 27 years paying into Social Security, just know that the offset's not going to be that max offset of $500 a month. You're always going to collect some of your own social. If you do $1,000, it may be an offset of half, but Social Security will ultimately provide you with your figures. Where you may have heard that you're not eligible to collect any Social Security is the collection of a spousal or widow's benefit. And this is an even harder date to beat. The only way you're not subject to the GPO is if you're exempt from the, if you were eligible to retire prior to 12/182. So again, a harder date to beat. Now the GPO does look at the dollar amount of your MTRS pension. So I'll say this twice. If 2/3 of your MTRS pension is higher than your spousal or widow's benefit, you're not eligible to collect any Social Security benefits. I'll repeat it. If 2/3 of your MTRS benefit is higher than what you get from your spousal or widow's benefit from Social Security, you're not eligible to collect any. If 2/3 of your MTRS benefit is lower than your GPO benefit, your spousal or widow's benefit, then you'd be eligible to collect the difference. In all cases from Social Security, you can't collect both your spousal benefit and your own. You would have to choose which one's higher. So with these offsets in mind, the WEP and the GPO, you can go to Social Security and say which one's going to be higher. My own Social Security with the windfall elimination provision or the collection of a spousal benefit. They'll need the dollar amount of your pension. And that's something you can reach out to our contact center for to receive once you're retired. So with the government pension offset, just know that if you are receiving a spousal benefit, it's usually half of what your spouse would receive. Then they compare that to 2/3 of your MTRS benefit. If your spouse had passed, you may be eligible for 100%. It's called the widow's benefit of what your spouse was receiving. Then they would compare it to the dollar amount of your pension. So in most cases, you're going to be collecting a little bit of your own Social Security with the offset through the WEP. You'll never be eliminated from collecting your Social Security, your own credits. You are maybe eliminated from collecting a spousal benefit. So that's something to keep in mind with the government pension offset. But again, if your spouse passes, maybe the widow's benefit pulls your benefit higher, high enough to collect some from Social. But again, you would have to sit down with Social to see with the WEP and the GPO, which benefit you should collect, and if there's any benefit according to a spousal benefit. So this is the last slide we have for you today. A little bit of good news to report here. This slide currently, and this is kind of hot off the presses here, so we'll start with the amount of the cost of living adjustment. This year, the legislature just signed the budget. We were one of the last states in the Commonwealth to sign an annual state budget. But they did, obviously it was because they had a surplus and were negotiating. One of the things they negotiated is what the retiree cost of living adjustment should be. Inflation is obviously through the roof right now. Inflation is very high. So the amount traditionally has been 3% on the last bullet point here, 3% of the consumer price index, whichever is less, on the first $13,000 of your retirement allowance. That allows for a maximum increase of about $390 per year. They increased it to 5% on the first $13,000, which increased, I think, to $540 per year. So it's about $54.17 a month. So it was increased from $32.50 a month. You have to be retired for a full fiscal year. So if you retire June 30th, the most common retirement date, if you finish the school year, you have to use June 30th by law, then you're eligible one full fiscal year later, which is July 1st of the next year. If you retire in the summer, and your retirement date's because your birthday's in the summer, and it still might make sense to retire. It definitely makes sense to retire on your birthday. You just would miss out on the first cost of living adjustment because you haven't been retired a full fiscal year as of the next July 1st. So if you retire July 15th because that's your birthday, just know that the next July 1st, you won't be eligible for the cost of living adjustment. It'll be almost 2 years later, July 1st of the year after, that you would be retired a full fiscal year and eligible for the cost of living adjustment. And they are granted by the legislature. The MTRS just administers your benefits in this situation. We obviously advocate for a nice COLA payment for our retirees, but it is subject to approval by the vote of Mass State Legislature and signed by the governor into law with the state budget process. So we are happy to report this year, COLA has been granted every year since 1997. It's almost a given, but I'm happy to report this year due to the inflation. Obviously not happy to report that there's inflation out there, but obviously due to the inflation, they've increased the percentage for the cost of living adjustment to 5% on the first $13,000, which is increasing the amount that we're, the increase is higher than in previous years to help cover some of the cost of our bills for our retirees. What you need to be aware of is the cost of living adjustments, though, while they're great, they've been approved by the Mass legislature, they're not enough to keep up with inflation. So the dollar amount of your pension, going forward into retirement, your buying power is going to go down as inflation eats into the cost of living adjustments. So this is where if you're a younger teacher, you should have an alternative retirement plan in addition to the pension, especially if you're tier 2, to contribute to the draw off of later in retirement as your buying power goes down with inflation later in life after your retirement benefit is calculated. And with that, if you have questions that we did not get to in your chat, you can visit our website, and on our contact us page, we don't have the general info email address here, but I can read it for you. geninfo@trb.state.ma.us. That's geninfo@trb.state.ma.us. Visit our website, mass.gov/MTRS, or call our Charlestown office or Springfield office. Charlestown office, we have a contact center here. We didn't get to your question in the Q&A or got cut off, we can definitely get to your question. And I can't thank you enough for all our educators have done for the last couple of years to keep our schools running, to make sure our children have the best education possible in the country. And I can't thank you enough for all you've done, and thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.